Hello, my name is Chris, and today I would like to do something a little bit different and talk to you about my mental health, to talk to you about my experiences of accessing support for my mental health through the National Health Service here in England. I would like to tell you a little bit about my recent mental health struggles and why I've made the decision to start using antidepressants again. Made a video a while ago. I can't for the life of me remember what it was called, but I know that I told you that for the longest time I had been trying my best to manage my mental health on my own without medication and without any support. At the time, it seemed to me that that was the best decision for me to make. For where I was at in my journey, for how I was as a person at that time, that was the best decision for me to make. I'll explain to you a little bit about how I came to make that decision and why. But needless to say, I don't regret it. I think as we go through our journey, we all have to make the right decision for us based on where we are at any given moment. And sometimes, one decision that we make 6 months ago might not necessarily be right for us now. Likewise, the decision we make now might not necessarily be the right one to make 6 months, a year down the line. So I believe very strongly that I have always made the best decision, at least the best decision I was capable of making. And right now, the best decision seems to be to at least to try and give antidepressants another shot. I took my first one yesterday, and to be honest, I was so tired yesterday that it didn't seem to affect me much. Whereas today, I took the tablet about 2 hours ago, and oh my goodness, I feel awful. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but I keep shaking. It's like I'm sat on a pneumatic drill. My legs are like shaking like crazy. I feel a weird sensation of being like full of adrenaline yet also totally exhausted. Earlier I felt so low and so defeated and deflated and just I actually felt worse than I felt for a couple of days before I started taking the medication, and I just accept that as a very unpleasant side effect of these drugs starting to implement themselves and to work their way through my system. So if this video is a little bit erratic, if if I am not my usual effervescent self, then I do apologise. I'm kind of all over the place. This is one of the few videos I've ever made where I've had no idea what I'm going to say to you before I turn the camera on. I just knew that I would feel better making a video today. I talked last week about, okay, we're going to dive into things like, self-destructive behaviour and weight loss when quitting smoking and things like that. And I've got these notes and I have plans to do those videos this week. However, it feels dishonest of me to come and make a video about, here's coping strategies for when you're feeling overwhelmed, or here's how to not self-sabotage and things like that. It feels dishonest of me to talk about that when I have something very real going on for me right now. And I feel like, I can't offer you much, but one thing I can always offer you, and I have always offered you since I started making this channel a couple of years ago, is my honesty and personal reflections on where I've been on my journey. So we will get to those other videos because I still think that the points I had to make about self-sabotaging behaviour and quitting smoking are still relevant and valid and useful. It's just I could walk the walk today. I could make that video, but I can't talk the talk, and I don't want to be deceitful or dishonest. So I'll be honest with you instead about where I am at. Now, one of the big reasons why I stopped taking antidepressants and I sort of stopped any kind of accessing any kind of mental health support through the NHS is that I felt totally disillusioned and disappointed and angry with the whole process and what they could do for me, or rather what they couldn't do for me. Over the years, I've shared with you before about there was a time in my mid-20s and I was married to this beautiful woman. We lived in this beautiful house by the river, and I had this great, wonderful job. Okay, it wasn't the most best paying job in the world, but I loved it dearly. Externally, I had all these wonderful things going on for me, but internally, I just felt awful. And my wife came home one day from work and she found me sat in an empty bathtub, fully clothed, crying my eyes out. And she said, "Chris, what's wrong?" I was like, I don't know what's wrong. And I was in floods of tears. So we went to see the doctor and he prescribed me antidepressants. And on and off, I would take antidepressants over the next couple of years. Yes, it might have been smarter to stay on them. I am using the excuse, and I realise that it is only an excuse, that at the time I was young, dumb, and actively alcoholic. So I wasn't making the best decisions that I could have made for myself. I don't blame anybody else for my mental health. Maybe things could have been different, but in my mid to late 20s, I didn't always make the best decisions that I could have done because I was just, like a mixture of being young and thinking I knew everything and also being actively alcoholic and just drinking myself. And terrible, right? Fast forward to the Great Depression of 2017 when, life has improved dramatically. Everything, I've got my own business, I'm a couple of years sober, I've got my own place, everything is going wonderful. And I just hit this point that I'd wake up every morning and my first thought was of self-harm. And then I'd be too tired to act on that self-harm, so I'd spend the whole day in bed. Ended up losing my business and lost all my money and got into more debt than I was already in. And at one point I tried to reach out and get help because I thought I'm in too deep here. I need to reach out and get help. So I spoke to the doctor and I was honest with the doctor. I said, look, I keep having these thoughts of suicide. I don't have a plan to kill myself beyond a vague, let's go and hang myself from a tree. But there was no, okay, here's where I buy the rope and here's when I'm going to do it. It was just this, suicidal ideation. I kept thinking about it. And I'm worried for my mental health. What can I do? She prescribed medication and sent me she said it was counselling. Having now studied as a counsellor, I realised that what I was being sent for was not person-centred counselling, which is the kind of counselling where you just sit and talk to another human being and they don't give you advice and they don't tell you what to do, they listen and they help you find the answers that are within yourself. That's not the kind of counselling I was sent for. I was sent to a CBT therapist, a cognitive behavioural therapist, who, and I mean no offence to this guy, was not very good at his job. I've since studied CBT, we've done a little bit of it in college, I've learned about stuff. And what I had in those sessions was nothing like CBT as I understand it to be now. Bear in mind, I went on this journey because I was depressed and having suicidal thoughts. And he said to me, have you ever been diagnosed with adult ADHD? No, it's the first time I've heard of this. So he started to work on getting me a referral to be tested for ADHD. And all of my subsequent appointments were talking about ADHD. Whereas meanwhile, deep inside me, I'm thinking, dude, I want to hurt myself. Please help me. And he kept focusing on. And it was the weirdest thing as well, because say the appointments were an hour long, we'd have like half an hour of talking, and then he'd spend the other half an hour typing up his notes and reading them back to me. It was just a bizarre experience. So I never got any help for depression or suicidal thinking as a result of going to cognitive behavioural therapy. I never even got cognitive behavioural therapy. I just got this weird conversation with this guy. Meanwhile, the ADHD assessment team contact me, and I go to see them, and I do this test, and then I spend like 2 hours in this room talking to this guy and this woman, telling them my entire life story. If anyone here is familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous, it was like doing a step 5 with someone, just telling them everything. And at the end, it was just bizarre, because they said to me, okay, we think you have traits of ADHD. If there is a spectrum where here is no ADHD and here is someone who's totally 100% ADHD, you are on that spectrum. And I was like, oh, okay. But then it was like, bye. And the whole thing just kind of fizzled out and went nowhere, and I wasn't offered any help or support or anything like that. It was just this weird, vague diagnosis. So long, and thanks for all the fish, and see you later. So that was my experience of trying to get help from the NHS for feeling suicidal. It just seemed to go, okay, I need to go this way to get help for my depression. I've been derailed into this ADHD thing, and that's hit a dead end. What am I supposed to do? So that's when I started to think seriously about, okay, the NHS are not going to help me. I have to do this by myself. So that's when I started, cycling and exercising and changing my diet and, looking into counselling and neuro-linguistic programming and all the different things. That's when I started taking this YouTube channel seriously and really focusing on learning, because I didn't get it right straight away, learning what was right for me to help me with my mental health. And I learned that the things that help me are practicing gratitude. Now, I don't believe, there are some people who, when they talk about gratitude, say it as if, depression comes down to a lack of gratitude, which is just not true. But I find that practicing gratitude helps. I find that sunlight and fresh air and eating well and getting exercise, I find that all those things help me. And for the longest time, if I'm organized, things like that, because if I am on this ADHD spectrum, sometimes it definitely manifests itself in the fact that I can be unorganized and unfocused and unproductive. So I need systems in my life to help me out, lists and charts. Honestly, sometimes I think if you looked at how I manage my life, it would look like an insane person. So all of these things helped me for all last year. I was having this great time. I'd come and we'd stand outside and I'd go, isn't life amazing? And it really was. Every word of that was true. I was having the time of my life. I went back to school and I did my level 3 counselling, which I've just finished. I'm looking forward to starting my level 4 diploma in September. But over the last couple of months, everything started to go wrong up here. Started off with a little bit of stress. And then I go, I've worked hard and I've shared with you loads of different things about, okay, when I'm feeling stress, here's how I can deal with it without drinking or smoking. When I'm feeling anxious, here's how I can deal with it. So I kept, a little bit would come and I'd deal with it, and then a little bit more would come and I'd deal with that, and then a little bit more would come and I'd deal with that. Eventually, however, where things went wrong is that the amount of stress coming into my life far exceeded my own ability to cope with that stress. And that's not a reflection on me to say that I'm weak or incapable or that I'm a bad person. It's more a reflection on the level of stress that came in, what was, far exceeded my capacity to cope. I've read before somewhere that oftentimes when people talk of suicide, they don't actually want to kill themselves. They just find that the amount of pain in their life far exceeds their ability to cope with that pain. And that's where I got to. However, I made the mistake of still trying to deal with it on my own. Still thinking, you know what, I've done well and I can keep doing this. And it would manifest itself in, I would get super hyper and super manic. I've told you today, like I'm shaking and I've got the adrenaline going, but this was a really weird kind of, when you get angry and you, like, your whole body is tense and hot and that's how I felt the whole time. Not necessarily angry, but that level of adrenaline. And, and I wouldn't be able to make good, helpful decisions about how to best deal with the stress that was in my life. So it reached a point where I could just, I could see myself starting to self-destruct and tear down everything that I built. So I was lucky that I still had the wherewithal to make one last good decision before I broke everything, and that was to call and ask for support. However, yet again, I felt let down and disillusioned and disappointed with the NHS service. There was a point I got to where I seriously thought I was going to do something stupid, and I rang and they said, okay, somebody will call you back in an hour. So an hour passed and nobody called. So then I had to call back, and finally I got to speak to someone, and he took down all the details. And to be fair, the next day I went into the mental health assessment team, and I spoke to the same guy, and I was there, and I was completely genuinely honest with everything that I told him. And he said, I suspect you may have bipolar, you may have this, that, or the other. I'm going to refer you to a psychiatrist, but it will take a couple of weeks. Bear in mind, I'm going insane at this point. I am, every day is getting harder and harder and harder for me to cope. But I just thought, okay, yeah, fine, okay. A couple of weeks to see this psychiatrist. I went home, and my descent into ill mental health just spiraled, and I just felt myself at points I thought I was losing my mind. The dark thoughts of self-harm and destruction were starting to become an obsession. And I knew that I was in trouble one day when I went for a walk, and I'd actually been having one of my better days. I was being productive and focused, and everything was going well for me. And I went for a walk, and all of a sudden I started thinking all these dark thoughts, and it was really, up here was a really horrible, horrible place to be. But because I've learned a lot over the last couple of years, and because I have practiced so hard on taking care of myself, there's a rational part of my own inner monologue that said, look, all these thoughts of self-harm and destruction and all these dark thoughts that you're having are just thoughts. And if you can just change your thoughts, even temporarily, you can get out of this state of mind and you can help yourself and, you know, always get yourself safe and then go and get some help. But the problem started becoming that I knew this. I knew that I could just, you know, it's just a case of changing my thoughts, but I wasn't capable of doing it. It's like I kind of know that to fly a plane, you press some buttons and pull the yoke and the plane flies, but I don't know which buttons to press and I don't know how to pull the thing. So it's, you know, it's all well and good saying it's easy, just change your thoughts. Yeah, but how? I don't know how. Or at least I do know how, but I wasn't capable of doing it in that time because of the level of stress that I was under that I didn't even realise was stress. And I had this pointed out to me 2 days ago because after days and days of going mental, I'm sorry, that's probably not a very PC term, but that's how I would be able to articulate it. After a couple of days of losing my mind, I rang up and I said, look, I cannot take this anymore. I need help today. And to be fair to the NHS service, they got me the help. They had me go in. This was like 10 o'clock in the morning. They had me go in for an appointment at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I still think that is too long of a wait. However, I'm not, having spent the whole day there, I don't believe that it's the waiting time is anything to do with the incompetence of the staff or that people there don't want to help you. I think the system is messed up and there's not enough people to support the kind of problems that we are facing today. And I don't know why we are facing these problems. So I had this long appointment at 2 o'clock and then I stayed like the whole day, and at like 5-6 o'clock in the evening I spent an hour with this amazing psychiatrist. She was so lovely and she was so on the ball, and it was one of the few times that I've ever spoken to someone and actually feel like, yeah, they get it, you know. And she reminded me that I'm a nice person, and, you know, we talked about this. I have a thing where I don't normally tell people, you know, in my real life that I come on YouTube and talk to you guys, but I was telling her all about this and my plans for the future and where I've been and my journey. And she got it, and, you know, she said, Chris, you've been under so much stress and you haven't even realised that it has been stress, and it internalizes in this thing of I am bad and I have failed and I am weak and I am stupid and therefore I must do harm. And it is not true. So I finally got the help that I needed, and I've been referred to go and see a counsellor, and I said right at the start of this video, I'm back on my medication. And I'm aware that this has been a very long video. I actually thought it would only be 5 minutes, but here we are. So I don't regret being on medication right now because it is what I need just to be able to get myself back into that frame of mind where I can start making good, healthy decisions about my future and about my life and about my body and my health and all that good stuff. It's one day at a time, it's one step at a time. I don't have to try and take on the world, which is quite often what I will try and do, and that is quite often where my stress comes from, is that I'm quite an ambitious person and I have all these goals and dreams. But instead of going, okay, I'll just take this goal now and then this goal, I go, I want it all and I want it now. So I need to work on patience too. So it's just been I appreciate this has been rambling. I appreciate this has been all over the place. I appreciate this has probably not been as helpful to you as some of the other videos, but I do appreciate you watching. like I said, it's important for me to be honest with you about where I'm at on my journey, so that when I do make the kind of videos where I offer suggestions or advice or anything like that, that you know that they're coming not from some guy who's just read a book or, you know, learned it on it from another video and is regurgitating. I am trying to share with you my lived experiences and telling you what helps me, so that you can decide for yourself whether or not they help you. Hopefully this is the start of my recovery from my mental health relapse, and by next week I will at least be able to share with you some of the videos I've wanted to share about self-sabotaging behaviour and weight and other quit smoking issues. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your love, your kindness and your support. I really do genuinely appreciate having this platform to come and speak to you today. This has helped me probably even more than it's going to help you. So thank you very much. Goodbye.